Okay, I have very little time now to go over this, but let me try really quickly. Today was the 31st day of the jodi arias trial, and they had the psychologist there talking about memory, talking about adrenaline, hormones, hippocampus, and so on and so forth. The equally can be said of a victim of a crime or a perpetrator of a crime. To me, unless you are a person that's sociopathic, such as mass murderers, even they say that they perpetrate their crime so hideously because they get a rush out of it. They actually feel alive. Not accounting for that, but let's just go back, that they're laying a platform for an appeals process. To me, that's what they're laying a platform for. I'm disappointed that the prosecution doesn't seem to have their own psychologist, because it seems that this psychologist has actually been, the latter part of his career has been involved in the criminal fields, and mostly on the defense. I would have wanted to balance that with a psychologist that's non-biased, neither defense or offensive, and I would have wanted a balance to that. Chemically, we all know that when we're in a fight or flight situation, whether we're being victimized or perpetrating a crime, or we are victim to a car wreck, or I work with wood, I was victim of an incident in working with wood. I have a memory of that. Most certainly I suffered the same chemical markers: the heightened heartbeat, the adrenaline, the hormones, the shivering, and the shock. So I could definitely see myself as the prosecution cross-examining and inflicting more generalizations. Another thing I'd like to point out is I didn't like the sort of veil, subliminal message of painting a veil over the defendant, jodi arias, as a police officer. In a way, it's like painting on a thin veil a police officer and covering her with it. It's a subliminal way. Instead of using police officer, they could say persons in the field of law enforcement. Now, why is that? Do I feel that that's pertinent? Because persons in law enforcement could be anyone. A meter maid, a person sitting at a desk, could be any one of those people donning a uniform, male and female. To me, using police officer puts her, sort of paints a veil over her, and is a subliminal way to paint her as a person who was defending themselves or protecting themselves against harm, which in a way you don't think that that's a big deal, but actually subliminal messages are very, very effective. Another point, in fact, that I've been looking at a lot of the footage of her being interviewed by the detective. The first interview is fine, I think, with a male. However, the second interview I would have had a female. Very well put together, and I've said it before, I feel it would have put jodi off, because if you look at her interviews with the police officer the first day, she is actually leaning so far over the table as to be like a cat draped across the table. This is a definite wanting to make some kind of connection on a level with this man, and she's used to dealing with men, and the case all involves sexuality in men. So having a woman after her arrest being the detective to interview her would have been much better, in my opinion. Also, I would not have opened the door for her to create this elaborate other story. I understand that they need more information about why she was cut, but I would not have opened the door, because he actually opened that door himself. If you go back and look at the tapes of her being interviewed with the detective, he's the one who said, "Are you protecting someone else? Don't open that door. It's not necessary." I would have had the camera, the memory chip, and other pieces sitting right there on my side of the table. And I would have said, based on all this information, I'm going to start asking you a series of questions, and I need your answers, honestly. And I think a woman could have conducted herself a lot better. Most certainly. I wouldn't want her to be totally on the defense, but I would say, I need some clarification. And I would have not mentioned that very much. I would have had that eat away at Jodi Arias, that it was sitting on the table. She would have been torn up as to what was found or not found or located in that medium of that camera and its memory chip. And then I would have slowly opened the door for the evidence, is that she keeps denying that she was never there, and then I would have slowly showed her where I could prove that she rented a car, that that car drove a certain amount of miles, and that we found evidence of her filling up, and so on and so forth. I would have led her in a sort of linear way to show I have her in his house, and ask her why she was there when she said she was never there. So anyway, those are my thoughts on the psychologist. I feel that you can combat this psychologist easily, because it doesn't matter whether you're the perpetrator or the victim. The physiological changes in fight or flight are the same. When you are, I like to do certain sports like climbing and parasailing and stuff like that, and windsurfing. And when I've had an accident, I had the same physiological changes. I've also been a victim of crime, and I can tell you that the perpetrator and I both went through the same physiological changes: a heightened heart rate, adrenaline, hormones flooding our system, and so on and so forth. In some cases, this can cause what he's saying is a post-traumatic stress syndrome, that by which she couldn't remember exactly what happened, or she has no memory of what happened. And I tell you that chemical markers such as adrenaline and a trauma, it's been proven that many things can trigger memories, and I think they cover a little bit about that. You can smell something, you can be doing something or having something done to you, and you will transgress, you will have a flashback. And there's been numerous studies on flashbacks, suppressed memory, and so on. But that's just my thoughts for today. Having a male prosecutor is work to show that she's not a shrinking violet. She's ready to do combat with him. She shows a combative mode. She shows that she can lose her temper. She can lose her cool. She shows that she can be confrontational. She shows, and he's tried to prove that she can be confrontational. So, anyway, I think they've set the platform for the appeals process. I don't know if this is necessarily going to change anything of what the jurors already think. I'm not going to tell you what I think, necessarily. Well, yeah, I am. I think she's guilty. And I have no emotional connection to this young man, his family, or anything. In fact, I'm on another continent watching this. And she's a chronic liar. She's a habitual chronic liar, a sociopathic liar. And if she lies about all this, she probably lied to herself about her relationship with him to begin with. I think he was going to reveal everything, and I've said that before. I think he was going to reveal everything to the elders, and this would effectively cut her out of a very large community of people that she was starting to make inroads. And I think that she would have found that very threatening. And but how do you go from 0 to psychotic? I think there has to be something else in her personality that hasn't been covered. Anyway, so that's just my 2 cents worth, and I'm going to get out of here. See you later. Bye.